Hello and welcome into Event Perspectives. My name is Rodney Hart. I'm the host of this show, and it's one of the favorite parts of my role where I get to really talk to other experts in the industry, and today is no different. We'll be talking to Jeremiah Alger with National FFA Organization, who does a lot of things in kind of close to my heart registration systems, but I'm sure we're going to hit topics across the board. Jeremiah, welcome to the show. How are you feeling?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing good. So this show, we like to dive into kind of the career paths that lead us to where we are. I feel like events is one of those interesting ones that there is a lot of non-traditional paths that led us to get to where we are. I know we've had some chats, so I'm excited to get there. But before we do anything, I like to get our guests warmed up with an icebreaker question. So if you're ready for that, I'm going to fire one at you.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, so let's start with this one. Dream scenario. If you had an unlimited event budget, what's one thing that you'd add to your next event?
I'd like to be able to get to a point where I could get rid of badges altogether and just have like an electronic version of check-in where you use your phone as your badge. So to do that on our end, it'd be a lot more scanning to get into events. Currently, we don't scan to get into as many of the events that we have. It's more of a verify they're wearing the badge and maybe see what events are on the badge type of stuff when they go through the process. So that's one thing I'd like to do.
Cool. I love that idea. Would you, in this dream scenario where there's no budget, like how do you feel about passive track? Would you try and track people where they're going, or how do you feel about that in general too, just as it relates to kind of digital badging and, people going where they're going? I feel like I know sometimes that data is seen as like, oh, it'd be awesome to have, but is it worth the infrastructure costs? Or, maybe attendees wouldn't like it. I'm curious to get your thoughts on that part too.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. We did some RFID tracking for a little while with our badges, and we found that the value proposition to our clients wasn't as great as we thought it would be. So we kind of went away from that. A lot of our group kind of already knows what they're doing and where they're going when they come to convention. So we could probably, if we went to the electronic version where you did some kind of app type thing as your badge, do more of a tracking that way to know what our traffic flow is in the expo hall. I know that's been a big conversation lately. Is the expo hall getting too full? Do we need to try to limit who's in there and stuff like that? So,
and I'm sure you're like me. It's like one of those things where you can collect a ton of data, and there's always probably a push and pull around how many things you're either asking for, what you're tracking, but then also are you using it? Once you have it and you're trying to solve for that particular challenge, I feel like it's always amazing to have the data to rely on. But I love that idea. I'm going to just use that to transition right into a little bit about your background. So we'll talk about what you do at National FFA and your current role. But before we get there, I love to start it kind of chronologically, the beginning, at least the beginning of your kind of working career and your history in events. Tell us a little bit about how long you've been in events and what got you here.
Okay. I started working in events in 2006. As a kid, I grew up on a dairy farm, and I always enjoyed getting the chance to travel and see the world and stuff like that. So going to college, I initially wanted to build roller coasters. I figured if you build roller coasters, you can make a lot of money. You get to travel, see the world, go to different amusement parks and stuff like that. Being the first person in my family to go to college, I made the mistake of not going to engineering school. So that's not the greatest if you want to build roller coasters. I went to IU, Indiana University, and they had a build your own major program. So I started taking some physics stuff, and then decided that the physics stuff I was in was going to have to be like in physics class all the time. And it wasn't really something I wanted to do. I wanted more of a well-rounded education at college and stuff like that. So then I saw that Indiana University had a tourism management major program with a business minor. So then I figured I could own the amusement park. And then I did the Disney internship, and I'm like, I don't know if I really want to do that either. So I like events because events you still get to have more like normal hours, but then you also have the time where you get to go do the actual event, and you're kind of hectic and it's planned, but things don't always go the way you want it to. So I like a little bit of the chaos. So.
You know what? I love that answer. I feel like that's like similar. My kind of intro was somewhat accidental, but I think what I loved about being in this industry was the phases, that you have with events, and you kind of have, a very organized planning phase, or maybe even before that, you can have like big, broad ideation. What are we going to do for next year? You're in kind of that, pie in the sky, and then, rubber meets the road. You get to plan it out, but then there is the lead up, and then the inevitable day of, where it's just kind of like that, there's going to be chaos. You don't know what it's necessarily going to be, but that there will be something. I need to ask a couple questions about this Disney internship, though, before I let you go on the roller coaster, because I am a big theme park fan, roller coaster fan. So I assume you are a roller coaster fan.
Yes, me and my cousin back in the day, we would go on the roller coasters as much as possible. When we went to amusement park, we went to Kings Island, which is great, and we also went to Cedar Point, which was my favorite. So.
Do you have what's the best roller coaster in the world? Whether you've ridden it or not, what's the best roller coaster in your opinion in the world?
I really want to try. I saw they have a new one at Cedar Point now, where you go up and the track's kind of like detached for a second, and then all of a sudden it swings down and connects, and then you go. So that would be very scary and interesting to see how that works.
I was myself a fan of the Roller Coaster Tycoon video game. In that video game, if you had a track that detached, a lot of chaos would ensue. So I don't know. That one maybe is beyond my comfort level. No. So I mean, super fascinating to hear kind of how that kind of led you into the event space. I'm curious, was there a moment you'd kind of describe maybe having a Disney internship and maybe seeing kind of the theme park side of the world? Was there a moment where you either, did your first event or something that, again, big, small, just that you kind of said, okay, maybe this is the career for me?
Well, I did the Disney internship. The main reason I didn't necessarily want to go that route was the hours. Like a lot of times I was scheduled for the weekends and all my friends weren't working at the same time. So we weren't on the same schedule and stuff most of the time. So a lot of times when you weren't working, you're kind of by yourself. But I always enjoyed the aspects of actually being on site and doing the work on site and seeing the event and the energy that goes around the event and stuff like that. So in college, I also worked for the convention center. So I did a lot of the setup of the meetings and stuff like that. So that was a great experience to see what tends to happen at events. And I always enjoyed traveling and seeing new hotels and staying in different places. So that's kind of what pushed me that direction.
It is something special, I feel like, to having done some things that most of my career has been in events, but knowing that all of the things you're working on, ultimately you get to see kind of physically take shape. The problems you either do or don't solve are problems you will see, again, whether on site, right? By the time the on site comes, if you did not solve that problem, it did not go away, which I think I've always kind of loved too. And then, I mean, also just getting to see, I similarly had a similar reaction where the first thing that I had kind of ordered an idea that, I had started and then saw it on site at an event, you go like, oh, I did, I physically, that was my idea. So let's talk a little bit about your role now and kind of your primary focus areas in the event space. Tell us a little bit more about what you do and kind of where you're focused at National FFA.
So at National FFA, I'm the event registration manager, and I also do the convention housing. So for housing, I help set up the convention housing blocks, and we have so many different groups that are booked into our convention housing blocks that I have to try to, as fairly as possible, divvy out what's available to different blocks and stuff like that. And then for the event registration system, I set up all the different events that we have registrations for. We do occasionally, if something doesn't have a cost, we use a different system than the stuff that has a cost. But so I set that up. We try to make it as efficient as possible for people to be able to register. We have a little bit of a complicated system on our end where we have some large groups of larger than your normal large groups, like 100 or more people trying to all register at the same time for the different event. And then for our large convention, we have 70,000 people total. Most of them are minors, people that are probably 40,000 to 50,000 of our attendees for the convention are minors. So that adds an added challenge on how do you get them to register and fill out all the information you need and do it in a manner that complies with how you have to deal with minors. So we were always trying to find a way to make it most efficient for the group leaders to be able to add their names and assign all the items they purchased to their guests, stuff like that. And then on site, we do a lot of group pickup. There's also individual pickup, but the group pickup, we do that and try to make that as efficient as possible to keep the lines down. So a lot of times the group leader will come through and they'll pick up the badges for the 100 people that they registered.
And so, yeah, that, I mean, and that is complicated. You know, I'm sitting here using my registration, you know, I'm kind of thinking through, yeah. So like, is it, you're kind of taking these big groups who all kind of either check in or they're kind of one group, but with 100 different sub, you know, like almost like guests or components to that one, like check-in. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, we've come up with a way to take membership data so that if they're on their membership roster, it'll automatically push over into our system so that we can kind of bulk import all the individual registrations more or less into like a spreadsheet type thing on the form. And then it pushes the names over. And then we're still working on a way to more quickly assign the stuff. Like your people show up on the list and you can assign it to people. But currently our system kind of allows you to break the rules sometimes and assign stuff to people you're not supposed to be assigned to. The logic doesn't quite work the way we want it to. So that's like one of the challenges we're trying to overcome at this time, because I try to limit human error as much as possible and restrict what people can do or can't do if I'm able to. But
so tell me, and I realize I kind of skipped one of my favorite questions, which is to say, before you got to this role, what were some of the other kind of event roles that you had? So I'm going to try and work these together into one, because I think you started by saying that you grew up on a dairy farm.
right.
National FFA, I'd love to know a little bit more about kind of what are the types of events and what's the focus of the events that you're running, like what are the success metrics? So I do want to get there, and before you get there, I guess maybe a little bit too about what are some of the other areas before in this role. So throwing a lot at you at one time, but you know, kind of what you did, what you did before you ended up in this one, and then maybe just a little bit of that personal connection to National FFA, if you know there is one there.
Okay, cool. So after I graduated college, I first had a little bit of a hard time actually finding a job in the field that I went to school for. So I first started working for like a medical lab with some of my friends that also graduated college with me and stuff like that. And then fortunately, after a couple of years, I was able to find a job working for an individual travel agency. The individual travel agency, they did individual travel, but they also did like groups and incentives, and they did a lot of like high school band stuff. There I did a lot of their system setup still. So I was kind of like their backup IT person, and I also built everything in the system that they sold to people. So that was good preparation for this. And then from there, I went to the corporate environment. I worked for Carlson Wagonlit Travel, and I was on the Eli Lilly account. There, I did a lot more like compliance type stuff, because you have to show certain things to the government when you're working with pharmaceuticals and doctors.
Yeah,
and stuff
pharmaceuticals.
like that.
So another not uncomplicated set of events that you were working on, right?
Yeah, a lot of rules to follow. And then during the pandemic, I ended up transitioning over here to the National FFA, and I've been doing the event registration system setup, and I go on site and help set up all the registration stuff on site for the different events. We have quite a wide variety of events. We have some smaller events where it's individuals going, like the next generation events. There's about 80 people. They go individually. They don't go necessarily as a chapter. Like it might just be one person from that chapter. And usually they send an advisor or like some kind of parent chaperone will go with them too, so that the kid's not just there by themselves. And then we also have an international leadership event. In that event, we have about 100, some people go on that event. They go to another country, learn about how they run agriculture in the other countries and stuff like that. We've gone to places like Australia, Costa Rica, stuff like that. Those ones I don't go on site for, because the registration component on site is just checking in with the travel director and the people that are going, basically. So, and then we have our next biggest event's Washington Leadership Conference. It's kind of like going to summer camp. You have 5 weeks of that. Each week's a different set of students and chaperones and stuff like that. And they basically go through the same program each week and learn about leadership and get to see some things in Washington, D.C. and get some congressional visits every once in a while and stuff like that too, to learn how politics works. So
Yeah, really cool. So I got a couple questions. One, Jeremiah, I don't know how they keep us out of these international. For the longest time, managed before I was in the role that I'm in now, I managed a lot of event technology. The number of times I tried to get on like sales club events, get to Mauritius or Hawaii or something. It was like, we'll be okay. We don't need any of that technology for this. But so that's just comment number one. Two, in terms of the events that you're organizing, is it like, are some of the efforts like awareness around this? Are these like, so are they Future Farmers of America, or I guess, is it America specifically? And then is it like education? Is it content? Like what's those that are coming to the event? Are they coming to kind of learn, meet and greet, or kind of gain knowledge? I'm just curious.
okay, yeah, most of our events are learning events, or knowledge share type events. So people will get together. Like our next gen events will specifically focus on a certain type of agriculture. Like we do some leadership stuff, that's specifically leadership stuff, which we don't necessarily think of as agriculture, but how to like do speeches and conduct business and like Robert's Rules of Order type things. But then we have things where you go learn how to plant the crops, or you specifically learn about dairy, cattle process like that. And then for like our convention, we have the student teacher workshops where they can go to the student teacher workshops. We also have a component of giving back to the community, like a National Days of Service that people register for. And we usually have about 80 different sites people go out to around the central Indiana area as part of that. It's like a 1 or 2 day event that we do actually as part of the convention. And then we also have some career success tours where people register to go out on these career success tours. The expo floor is kind of like an opportunity to meet with colleges and potentially find out where you might want to go to school to learn about agriculture, or just go to school in general. We also have a lot of vendors in our expo show floor that are there to demonstrate their different products or career paths for the students. So it's a lot of like trying to teach the children or students what their opportunities are in the future, where they can go and continue their success through agriculture and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, and it feels like, probably a pretty powerful opportunity for them to kind of go get that exposure, where I guess maybe in your more traditional, college career fairs or things like that, you're probably going to get, underrepresented in terms of that information if you're looking to get into that space. So, really cool. And also really cool to think about just some of those challenges that you have with those big groups. I mean, obviously it's massive events, massive amounts of people, but kind of these like big groups. So I want to talk more about some of that, the challenges and things that you're solving for in your day-to-day now. I want to ask, it's going to be the inevitable AI question. I don't get to do what I do without at least asking this once. So you've been doing this for 20 years. You're event registration, you're doing probably customer service pieces, you're probably doing some contracting. Like from a day-to-day task perspective, I'm curious what today looks very much the same and what feels very different, or maybe, and you can answer this in, in any way that you want. And then the separate AI part, like, are you seeing AI starting to change that process, or, whether that's something you see in the near future or something maybe you've already seen?
Okay. One thing I've noticed in the last 20 years is it's nice that a lot of stuff's more digital now, that I can jump on a call and do a meeting with somebody and don't necessarily have to go in person like you used to have to do in the past. Like a lot of stuff's not kept on paper, like filed anymore, so you don't have to go through file cabinets. You can just, it's more shared. It's much easier for people to collaborate and get together and do stuff. We're still early in the AI adoption process on our end. I would like to be able to use it to help do some of the customer service type support like questions through the registration system. Currently, we don't have that. I joke around with some of my colleagues that people don't like to read as much anymore as they used to. So that if I could somehow put together short little video clips like TikTok clips and put those as the instructions in the registration system, that would help probably solve some of our customer registration system questions we get, but I haven't figured out a great way to do that yet. So
let's talk about that for a second. I feel like I'm not at 20 yet. I'm coming up on 20, but is reading getting worse? I mean, of course, like part of me goes like, am I just, getting old and shaking my fist at the sky at this point? Or is it getting worse? Because, I have in my mind, it's like words exist in emails and stuff like that. But like, if you need someone, like, I feel like text on a button, maybe the hero text, maybe your subject line. I need to just, hash this out with somebody else who's been doing this for a long time. How bad is the reading problem out there right now?
we always have a complex debate on like how wordy you should get when you put stuff in there. And then ultimately, like, we'll start making it less wordy, then people want to put more words in. But then it seems like no matter what we do, like, we'll have something that says, if this doesn't apply to you, put NA in the box. And we'll get a question like, I don't know what to do. I don't have a FFA member ID. Even though, like, right above it, it says put NA in the box. So part of me feels like it's getting worse, but it could just be that I'm getting old too. But like, I understand that I'm kind of a visual learner, so it's much easier if I watch somebody do something to be able to copy what I'm supposed to be doing. Where if I read it, I might misinterpret what they meant, type of stuff. But I also have a 16 and a 14-year-old, and at times it feels like if they can't watch a video, they're not even going to try to like take the time to read. Like, my 16-year-old started driving. I said, you got to read this manual before you get your license because there's specific questions that you have to know that are only in the book. And he's like, oh man, I don't know if I want to get my license anymore. Because he didn't want to take the like hour or so that it took to read the manual. He just wanted to be able to watch a video or something instead. But
and I love that you've kind of hit on this TikTok. And one, I am with you on this idea of TikTok, and we can talk. I know we talked a little bit about there. I've seen a platform that's out there that kind of has some ways of embedding that on at least your web pages, kind of shorter form video. But I feel like even TikTok to me has changed the way that people want that information, because then it was like, oh, we'll just make a video. And then it's like, okay, great. We've got a great 25, 30-minute tutorial. And, how many people would you send that to? There is a place for that longer form content, but then I also feel like there's kind of an appetite for like faster play, like 20-minute video. There's no way, I need it, I need it in 2 minutes at most. So it is really interesting. I feel like how probably those preferences change, but is in that idea that you have, I mean, I feel like you're gravitating towards TikTok, and maybe you said 14 and 16-year-old, maybe even that's, helping to shape the idea of like, even if it's a 5-minute video, it might be too long, right?
Right. We do have some events where the students can actually register themselves for the event also. And I'm finding a lot of students don't actually finish the form. They get to a certain point, they just like stop. Mostly, I think it's the part where they have to pay and they're not sure, like nobody told them they're gonna have to pay or whatever. So they weren't prepared when they got there and stuff like that. So then I have to send out a lot of, you didn't finish the form emails to finish the form. Here's a link to go finish the form. But
yeah. And it's, I do find how much, and I want to talk a little bit more too about kind of this registration and maybe some of these other, like how you focus on solving for that complex problem of registering groups. But it's interesting. I feel like how much human behavior matters, right? Because I think to say, well, I built a form and they'll get through it or they won't. I find myself, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. I find myself always wondering, like, is anyone actually not coming to this because, it was too hard at first, and then like they didn't do it, 3 weeks ago, and then when they got to it, like, now it's too late. I guess that's, I'm curious to get your take on that. Like, is there such thing as a registration form that's so bad that you actually lose attendees, or do they care enough about your event that they'll they'll suffer. And I mean, obviously the event, and organization and information and data suffers if probably you don't make the form, easier. But I'm curious to get your take on how bad can a registration form be before you think you're really sacrificing number of attendees?
I think at some point you can get it too long and like people just get tired of filling it out and they give up. And then they either show up on site and try to get whatever they couldn't figure out accomplished, or they just decide they're not coming anymore. We're kind of fortunate in our organization that we kind of have like a fixed base that's pretty much how they consistently seem to come. So it's harder to get them to the point where they're going to decide not to come, probably because of the form stuff. Mm-hmm. Like one complicated thing we have is we have to have waivers signed for all of our events. And mm-hmm. that's created a lot of angst and frustration, which we're about 4 years into the process now. So people are starting to get used to it. So it's not as bad as it was at first. But yeah, I think it is possible to create forms that are so complicated and complex that you probably do lose some people sometimes. But I also joke around that if I made a system that read your thoughts and I did exactly what you wanted it to, you're still going to have somebody mad that I was thinking that, but I didn't mean that. So
yeah, right. One, yes, I relate to that recently. And it's funny that you say, I think that is really well said. Like, there is probably some drop off, but I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. I think a form can be bad enough that someone's going to say, I'm just going to come and try and figure it out on site. But I think you really start you create friction, I think, at an event. You probably impact a registration experience really negatively by if not treating it as like, hey, let's make this as easy and user friendly as possible. You're now creating an on-site process that's that much harder for everyone. And eventually someone's going to have to get through that form. Recently I was at an event and was supporting with some on-site stuff, and the form is healthy. It's long, so you have some people that it's like, well, I didn't do it. Now what do I need to do? It's like, you need to do the form, and so to watch people do it, you're like, you can see physically, like, oh, like it's a tough first experience, for attendees, for that. Right.
Yeah. We try to do a lot of testing with internal groups and different, people that we can like let go through the form as a test version beforehand to try to get as many questions and pain points as possible to try to hopefully limit a lot of that. But I know sometimes, especially for our convention, it's so large and there's so many different options for people that it can be overwhelming at times.
And you kind of hit on this. I'd love to like talk a little bit more about it. Is so that large group registration process, how do you do it? For anyone who's listening to this and goes, hey, actually, I've got that as well. Or, like, how are you solving for that problem? And is it one person picking up 50 badges? Are the badges already printed? Like, how are you solving for that problem today? And, are there new ideas or ways that you're kind of looking for, to kind of change that process?
Okay. Yeah. For the large groups, we specifically have stuff that funnels them to specific forms that are for the large groups so that the majority of the people that aren't large groups don't have to go through that process. On the large group forms, there's stuff specifically just to the larger groups to help make their process easier. When we get to the adding the names of the individuals attending as part of the large group, you used to only be able to do it like one person at a time. Now we have a way that you can import the stuff from the membership system over to the registration system. And then it kind of creates like a giant spreadsheet of all your names and the different attendee types and stuff like that. If the people aren't part of your group, you can individually add those individuals that aren't part of your membership roster already. So that helps kind of bulk import and speed up that import process for the names and stuff. And then the next step we have is to assign the agenda items, which is basically what you purchased for your event. A lot of people use sessions, but currently with our current system, we use agenda items instead of sessions. Okay. So we have another screen where it'll show all the names that you added through the bulk import process, and then you have to check mark the box. And there's a select all button to make it easier. everybody's going, but then it's also kind of complicated because you have to purchase the correct amount beforehand. So the first part they do is they come through and they purchase everything. And then when they get through all their purchases, then they add the names individually and assign what they purchased to people. That's how we currently do it. We found that tends to make the large groups the happiest and tends to be the quickest for them. Then on site, we used to do some pre-batch printing for the 100, like the large groups of 50 to 100 or more. And we found that a lot of times people weren't necessarily picking them up, or they were like, go ahead and print them again anyways. And at this point, our printing system's gotten fast enough that one person can come up and print out those 100 badges pretty quickly. They don't have to wait that long. So we quit pre-printing like about 2 years ago. But
yeah, I mean, I'm totally with you. You know, I think we're big fans here of, you know, printing on demand, you know, whether that's late changes or just, you know, the actual, you kind of mentioned filing system at the beginning of this, or, you know, and, you know, it is, I remember coming into the industry and people had, you know, binders. You know, I think I never quite got to the event binder version, you know, of managing an event. But, you know, I think even then on site too, there is something that's kind of nice about not having those physical badges and some way of sorting, categorizing, finding, and distributing them. Because, you know, all of that can be a time and space challenge on site.
it would be interesting to get to a way where you maybe had an app, and like when the people are close to being in the building, they could say, print my badges, and then they're ready for them when they get in there. But that'd be like next level that we're not at yet.
I like that idea. No, you know what? I'm jotting that one down. That's I'm going to send that over to our product team now, because yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think the ability to trigger that print and, you know, have it tell you where to go, pick it up, I think is, you know, especially if there was kind of enough geolocation data. I feel like there's tools and technologies that are out there that probably can make this process possible. So yeah,
I've heard about the facial recognition stuff that some people are starting to use now, but I'd like to learn a lot more about that and see how that actually works.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one, I will say, you know, one of our events that we've done. And I think it's worked extremely well. Like, I mean, some of the technology that's there, obviously it's opt-in, you know, you can choose to do that. It wasn't the only way to either check in or scan into sessions, but I mean, some of the technology that's out there is just incredibly fast at, you know, kind of identifying and making that process feel pretty magical. You know, you had mentioned, and I think I keep on my desk this little Disney Magic Band, because I do think, I know we're not promoting Disney here, but you know, the idea of just how seamlessly they make, you know, those attendees flow. And I think to me, it's super important, right? Of the experience that we walk away having had and what we, you know, feel about that particular event. I think all parts of that, you know, eliminating any friction that exists in the process, I think dramatically kind of improves the memorability, the overall experience that our attendees have.
Right. Yeah. We try to limit our amount of time that people have to spend in line as much as possible, try to make it as quick and seamless, because nobody wants to spend time standing in a registration line when they can go actually do the events and stuff like that. So, yeah.
All right. So I'm going to transition. We've got two things that we like to do at the end of these. So Jeremiah, thank you already for the time, the information that you've shared. I'm sure we could kind of continue to geek out on some registration, registration questions. But what I'd love to have you do is tell us a little bit about your favorite industry advice or wisdom. This is famously a profession that is not for the faint of heart. You know, I think it ranks up there with some of the more stressful jobs, and you know, a lot of the other ones can be life and death jobs, and events ranks typically not far away from some of those. So I'm just curious to know, like, what would be your favorite piece of advice for someone that's coming into the industry, is new to the industry in general?
Okay. One of my ex-coworkers I used to work with, she was about ready to retire, and I was young. I was like 20 at the time, said to me one time that you got to be able to separate your work problems from the rest of your, like, what's going on in your life. So when you go home, you got to have some kind of outlet that you can go do. And let the other stuff go. For me, that's soccer. I go coach soccer. I play soccer. It's an opportunity to go just focus on soccer and forget about everything that's going on. That other stuff will still be there when I come back tomorrow. And events kind of like its own animal. Sometimes the best plans like doesn't always go the way you want it to go. It can kind of, especially with a large group of 70,000 people, go its own direction a little bit, but you still have control of what's going to happen. And as long as you kind of like plan and set up scenarios for how to deal with situations ahead of time. But even then, you still have to be able to roll with the punches and go with the flow. So it takes a while to get to that point sometimes.
All right. So now the very, very final conclusion here is whether you choose to accept it or not. Really, the hardest part is for me to not follow up. We do a lightning round segment here where I'm going to ask you just a series of fun rapid fire questions. Feel free to just answer with whatever is the top of your mind. And then I lose points if I follow up on anything because I'm always told by our marketing team who puts these together that I never follow that instruction, but I'm going to try.
Okay.
All right. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. First question. Who is your dream guest keynote speaker?
Okay. As a big soccer fan, I would want to pick Lionel Messi. He's my favorite player. I like him better than Ronaldo. I know there's a big Ronaldo Messi debate because I feel like he's a little bit more of a team player. He's a better distributor. Ronaldo's more me, and like a true striker type character, where Messi's much more about the success of the team and wanting to win. So.
Love it. And we're starting, a war between countries, but it's great. True or false? You prefer small, intimate events over large-scale ones?
I actually prefer the large events where there's a lot going on. I find it, I don't know. I like a little bit of the chaos. So the larger events have a little bit more of the chaos. The smaller ones, sometimes I find myself getting a little bored sometimes because it's more predictable and stuff like that.
You're just too good at your job, Jeremiah. What is one book that everyone should read?
The best book that I've ever read was It's Not About the Bike by Lance Armstrong. I know there's some controversy about him cheating and stuff like that, but him overcoming the cancer when he's given a very small chance to live, and I just find it very inspirational. And I think he did a lot of great work for cancer research if you put the other stuff aside.
Yeah. It's a great answer. The best airline is?
It used to be Southwest because they didn't have bag fees, but now that they have bag fees, I might have to reevaluate. I currently like Allegiant if I'm flying down to Florida because they're direct flights and the prices are very good. And sometimes they unboard and board from the back and the front at the same time because you fly into these small airports, so you get off the plane faster. But.
You know what? Hey, I got to say, I know why they go front to back, but back to front makes a lot more sense. Window seat or aisle seat?
I like a window seat just because I like to be able to see what's going on outside. And sometimes I get motion sick, and being able to look out the window helps me not be so motion sick type stuff. But
it's good for everybody involved. Networking session or educational workshops?
I prefer the educational workshop. I like to learn, and sometimes the networking stuff exhausts me a little bit. But.
Yeah. You have a concert to close your event. Who's your dream musical artist?
I would pick Eminem personally. I know he's not necessarily large event friendly with some of his lyrics and stuff like that, but I saw him back in 2004. It was a great show. And his life story is kind of inspirational, coming out of nowhere to get where he is and stuff like that. I know there's some controversy around some stuff, but
listen, Jeremiah, you're picking great answers here. I mean, you're going to make some CEOs squirm, but I think that's it. You're going to make an audience happy, I think. If you could host an event anywhere in the world, where would it be?
The Grand Canyon's one of the greatest places I've been to. I think it's amazing there. I'm not sure. It'd be difficult to get a lot of people out there to do an event, but it's a great atmosphere to hold an event if you get people out to it.
Are you doing it at the top or at the bottom of the canyon?
That'd be fun to do a little bit at the top and the bottom. I've only been there twice, and both times I wasn't there long enough to actually hike all the way down. So we started to hike down a little bit, but I think it'd be cool to do like maybe like overnight camp at the bottom and then come back out the next day as part of your event. It'd probably have to be a smaller event, but
yeah, and some fit people. I'll say because I had the same thing. I don't know that. See, I'm already breaking my rule in the lightning round. They have the signs everywhere. Don't try and hike down and back up in the same day. And I was there with a friend that we had not enough time. We're like, should we try? And I think we got halfway before I said, let's turn it around. This is not, I'm not going to make it. Final question. You have a closing event party. Are you going with live music or are you going with a DJ?
Most of the time I would prefer to have live music. But DJs are also nice sometimes because you can do a little bit more variety of music that you're playing to make more people happy. But live music's always fun.
You know, I think I'm with you. Live music. Jeremiah, that was the last question. I promise there's no other false close that we're going to have. You have officially wrapped up. You are off the hot seat. Thank you so much for the time. I know I found it super valuable. I'm sure our listeners are going to find it super valuable. So thank you for joining Event Perspectives.
All right. Thank you. Bye.